The aircraft had leveled out, the seatbelt light dimming as passengers settled into the rhythm of the flight. Laptops opened, earbuds slid in, and drink carts began to roll down the aisles. The single dad leaned back, resting his head against the window, listening absent-mindedly to the sound of his daughter humming while she colored. Then, a flicker of silver caught his eye. At first, he thought it was just sunlight glancing off the wing. But the shimmer held steady, a sleek shape rising fast from below the clouds. Moments later, another appeared, sliding into perfect formation on the opposite side of the aircraft. The cabin stirred. Passengers craned their necks toward the windows, murmurs spreading like wildfire. "Are those jets?" someone whispered. Fingers pressed against glass. A man in business attire fumbled for his phone, angling for a picture. Outside, the twin F-22 Raptors glided effortlessly, their presence both awe-inspiring and unnerving. Their metallic bodies gleamed in the afternoon light, engines humming low and steady. The way they flew, not intercepting aggressively, but accompanying, suggested purpose, not accident. Inside the cockpit, a ripple of tension ran through the crew. The captain's calm voice came over the intercom, slightly too controlled. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a military escort joining us temporarily. Please remain seated." The passengers gasped, some clutching armrests, others exchanging nervous glances. Why would fighter jets be here? What was happening? Amid the unease, the man in 12F said nothing. He placed a steadying hand on his daughter's shoulder as she looked up, wide-eyed, and asked in a whisper, "Daddy, are those here for us?" He didn't answer. Not yet. His gaze lingered on the Raptors slicing through the sky, flying close enough that he could almost see the tinted helmets of the pilots inside. Something about the way they moved told him this wasn't a random patrol. They weren't here for the plane. They were here for someone on the plane. And he already suspected who. The boarding line inched forward, the hum of rolling suitcases blending with the muffled announcements echoing through the terminal. He moved quietly, one hand gripping the handle of a scuffed carry-on, the other guiding his daughter through the narrow jet bridge. She clutched her stuffed bunny against her chest, her small backpack nearly toppling her with each step. When they reached their row, he eased into the window seat, 12F, with the slow movements of a man carrying years of fatigue. He lifted his daughter into the middle seat beside him, buckled her in with gentle precision, and gave her a tired smile. To the casual observer, he was just another single dad doing his best, jeans a little worn, a jacket that had seen better days, hair that could use a trim. The flight attendants swept past, checking overhead bins and seatbelts. Passengers barely noticed him. Some scrolled through phones, others fought for luggage space, but he stayed quiet, keeping his focus on the little girl beside him. She opened her coloring book on the tray table, crayons clattering across the plastic surface. He chuckled softly, gathering them before they rolled away. There was nothing remarkable about him to the world around. Just a man in seat 12F, a father traveling with his child, blending into the sea of strangers at 30,000 feet. No one could have guessed that within the next hour, the calm mask of anonymity he wore would shatter, and the skies themselves would remember his name. The cabin had gone hushed, the earlier chatter swallowed by the tension outside the windows. The two Raptors held their perfect escort, one off each wingtip, their silver bodies glinting like silent sentinels. Every passenger could feel it now, this wasn't just routine. Something was happening. A chime broke the quiet. The lead flight attendant, her composure steady but her eyes betraying a flicker of unease, knelt beside the man in 12F. She lowered her voice, careful not to alarm the child beside him. "Sir," she said softly, "the captain just received a direct request from the Air Force. They need confirmation of your identity." A wave of murmurs swept through the nearby rows. Heads turned. People who hadn't noticed him before now stared, searching for some sign of who he was and why the military cared. The businessman across the aisle shifted uncomfortably, a teenager leaned forward, wide-eyed. The man in 12F didn't flinch. Slowly, he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. His daughter watched him curiously, her crayon poised above the page. with practiced calm, he pulled out a battered leather wallet. From it, he slid an ID card, edges frayed, photo slightly faded, the kind of thing kept not for show but for necessity. He handed it to the attendant with a quiet, almost reluctant nod. "Tell them," he paused, as if dredging up a part of himself he had long buried. His voice dropped into a register that carried weight, a tone that silenced even the whispers around him. "Tell them it's Iron Hawk." The name seemed to hang in the air. The attendant blinked, unsure of its meaning, but something in the way he said it made her straighten. She clutched the ID like it was heavier than paper and hurried toward the cockpit. Around him, passengers traded confused looks. To them, it was just a strange phrase, a call sign with no context. But for the men flying the Raptors outside, it would mean far more. The father sat back in his seat, expression unreadable. He turned his gaze toward the window, watching the jets hold their line, waiting. His daughter tugged gently on his sleeve. "Daddy, what's Iron Hawk?" For a moment, he let the question hang unanswered. Then, with the faintest smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, he whispered, "It's just who I used to be." In the cockpit of the lead Raptor, the radio crackled to life with the flight attendant's trembling voice relaying the message from the captain. "Passenger identified. He says his call sign is Iron Hawk." For a heartbeat, silence filled the channel. Then the young pilot flying lead almost lost his grip on the stick. His gloved hand tightened, his breath catching in disbelief. "Say again," he demanded, his voice sharper than he intended. The message repeated, clear this time. "Iron Hawk." In the second jet, the wingman swore softly under his breath, his pulse thundering. He'd grown up hearing stories of that name, the pilot who had pulled off maneuvers so impossible they became training case studies, the one whispered about in simulators as a living legend. Some called him reckless, others a genius, but all agreed, Iron Hawk didn't lose. Both Raptors straightened in perfect unison, their wings holding sharper, their cockpits suddenly heavy with respect. This wasn't just another civilian on board that airliner. This was the man whose tactics they had studied, whose victories had shaped their training manuals, whose shadow still lingered over the Air Force even after he'd disappeared from active duty. Inside the cabin, none of that history was known. The passengers only saw the change outside, the Raptors subtly adjusting formation, their presence shifting from threatening to protective. A murmur rippled down the aisle as people leaned to the windows, whispering about the strange display. Back in 12F, the man sat quietly, his daughter leaning against his arm, oblivious to the weight of what was unfolding. His expression barely moved, save for a flicker of something in his eyes, not pride, not quite regret, but recognition. The radio chatter between the two jets remained unheard by the passengers, but if they could have listened in, they would have heard the raw disbelief in the young wingman's voice. "Lead, is it really him?" The reply came steady, reverent. "There's no mistaking it. That's Iron Hawk." And at 30,000 feet, two of the most advanced fighter pilots in the world flew not as escorts or enforcers, but as soldiers standing at attention, honoring the man who had once ruled the skies.